The child's fist struck the door 3 times before dawn. Jake Brennan hadn't spoken to another soul in 4 years. Not since the fever took Emma and their boy. Not since he'd sworn never to let anyone close enough to break him again. But when he opened that door and saw the 7-year-old girl standing barefoot in the summer dust, blood smeared across her nightgown, his oath shattered like glass.
"Please, mister," her voice cracked. "They're killing my mama."
If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it moves you, subscribe and stay with me until the end. Now let me tell you about the morning that changed everything. The girl couldn't have been more than 7. She stood on Jake Brennan's porch, trembling. Her nightgown was torn at the shoulder, and dried blood streaked down her arm. Not her own blood, Jake realized. Too much of it. Someone else's. "Where?" His voice came out rough, scraped raw from years of silence. "The creek. The old Miller cabin." The child's teeth chattered despite the summer heat. "Mama told me to run. She said find help. She said don't look back." "But you looked back." The girl's face crumpled. "I heard her screaming." Jake grabbed his rifle from the wall. His hands remembered the weight of it, the familiar cold of the barrel. 4 years since he'd pointed it at anything but coyotes and rattlesnakes. 4 years since he'd had a reason to. "What's your name?"
"Lily. Lily Whitmore."
"Lily, you're gonna wait here."
"No!"
She grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength.
"I'm coming. I have to. She's my mama."
Jake looked down at this child, at her fierce, terrified eyes, at the way she lifted her chin even as her whole body shook. Something in his chest cracked open. "Then you stay behind me. You do exactly what I say. Understand?"
"Yes, sir."
He saddled his horse in under a minute, lifted Lily up, and swung on behind her. The mare sensed his urgency and broke into a gallop before he'd fully settled. "How many men?" Jake asked as they rode.
3, maybe 4. I couldn't see good in the dark."
"You know them?" Lily's small body went rigid against his chest.
"One of them. Uncle Marcus."
Jake's jaw tightened. He'd heard that name before. Marcus Whitmore owned half the land between here and Cheyenne. Owned the general store. Owned the sheriff, some said. "Your uncle did this to your mama?"
"She ain't really his family no more. Not since Papa died."
Lily's voice dropped to almost nothing.
"Uncle Marcus says Mama killed Papa. Says she let him die on purpose. But that ain't true. Mama loved Papa. She cried for months after."
Jake pushed the mare harder. The old Miller cabin sat a mile past Widow's Creek, abandoned since the cholera took the Miller family 3 summers back. Perfect place to do something you didn't want witnesses to.
"How long ago did you leave?"
"I don't know. It was still dark. I ran and ran, but I kept getting lost. Hours then. Maybe 3, maybe 4. Jake's stomach turned to ice. A woman alone with Marcus Whitmore and his men for that long. He'd seen what men did in this territory when they thought no one was watching. The cabin came into view through the cottonwoods. Jake pulled the mare to a stop and dismounted, lifting Lily down. "You stay here, right here. Don't move unless I call for you." "But, Lily," he knelt to her level, his voice low but firm. "If something goes wrong in there, you run. You run back to my ranch and you hide. There's a root cellar behind the barn. You get in there and you don't come out for nobody but me. You understand?" Tears spilled down her dirty cheeks.
"Is Mama gonna be okay?"
Jake couldn't lie to her. Couldn't make promises he might not keep. "I'm gonna try." He approached the cabin low and quiet, rifle ready. The door hung open, listing on broken hinges. No sound from inside except, there, a soft moan. Human. Female. Jake stepped through the doorway and his gut clenched. Clara Whitmore lay in the corner, curled around herself like a wounded animal. Her dress was torn nearly to shreds. Blood matted her dark hair, ran down her face, pooled beneath her on the dirt floor. Bruises covered every inch of visible skin, her arms, her throat, her swollen face. But she was breathing. Barely. "Mrs. Whitmore!" Jake crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside her. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. One was swollen completely shut. The other, deep brown and glassy with pain, struggled to focus on his face. "Lily." The word came out broken, wet. "My baby." "She's safe. She found me. She brought me here." Clara's hand fumbled for his, gripped with desperate strength. "You have to take her. Take her away. Marcus, he'll come back. He'll—" "Easy now. I'm not leaving you." "You don't understand." Clara coughed, and blood flecked her lips. "He wants me dead. He wants the land. Daniel's land. He says I murdered his brother." "Did you?" The question was brutal, but Jake needed to know what he was stepping into. Clara's damaged face twisted with grief. "Daniel fell from his horse, broke his back. I rode 3 hours for the doctor, but by the time we got back—" Her voice shattered. "He was already gone. I held him while he died. I held him, and I couldn't save him." Jake had heard enough. He slid his arms beneath her and lifted. Clara cried out, her body going rigid with pain. "I know it hurts. I'm sorry. But we can't stay here." "They'll kill you too. Marcus has men. He has the sheriff in his pocket. You'll be—" "Ma'am, with respect, I've survived worse than some land-grabbing coward and his hired guns." He carried her out of that cabin and into the morning light. Lily burst from the tree line the moment she saw them, running full speed, her small face wild with hope and terror. "Mama! Mama!" "Lily, baby!" Clara stretched one shaking hand toward her daughter. "You're safe. Thank God. You're safe." "I found him, Mama. I found help, just like you said." Jake settled Clara on the ground, propping her against a tree while he figured out how to get them all back to his ranch. The mare could carry 2, but not 3. Not if one of them was badly injured. "Lily, I need you to be very brave right now. Can you do that?" The child nodded solemnly. "You're going to ride in front of me. Your mama's going to sit behind, and I'm going to hold her steady. We're going to go slow. It's going to hurt her, but we have to move. You understand?" "I understand." Jake lifted Clara onto the horse first. She bit down on the scream, her face going gray-white. Then Lily settled against the saddle horn. Finally himself, one arm around Clara's waist, holding her upright against his chest. "How far?" Clara's voice was fading. 3 miles, maybe less. You stay awake for me, Mrs. Whitmore. You stay awake." "Clara," she coughed again. "My name is Clara." "All right, Clara. I'm Jake. Jake Brennan. And I'm going to get you home." The ride was the longest of Jake's life. Every hoofbeat sent Clara deeper into agony. Lily kept turning to look back at her mother, her small face drawn tight with fear. Jake held them both steady and pushed down the anger building in his chest. 4 years he'd stayed away from people. 4 years he'd convinced himself that isolation was safety, that if he never cared about anyone again, he could never lose them. Now he had a half-dead woman bleeding against his chest, and a child whose future depended on what he did next. So much for staying uninvolved. His cabin came into view just as Clara's body went completely limp.
Jake kicked the mare into a final burst of speed, pulled up hard at the porch, and dismounted with Clara in his arms before the horse had fully stopped. "Lily, door, now!" The child scrambled down and ran ahead, throwing the cabin door wide. Jake carried Clara inside and laid her on his bed. The sheets were clean. He'd washed them just last week, more out of habit than hope. She looked worse in the light filtering through his windows. The bruises weren't just dark, they were black in places. Her breathing came shallow and labored, at least 2 ribs broken, maybe more. Jake had seen wounds like this before, during the war, in the camps where prisoners came back looking more dead than alive. "Lily, I need hot water. There's a pump out back and a kettle by the stove. Can you manage that?" "Yes, sir." The child moved with purpose, her fear channeled into action. Good. She'd need that strength in the days to come. Jake pulled his emergency supplies from the chest at the foot of the bed. Clean cloths. A bottle of whiskey for cleaning wounds. Bandages he'd made himself from old shirts. A needle and thread, though he prayed he wouldn't need it. Clara's eyes opened as he began cutting away the ruined remains of her dress. Just enough to reach the wounds, no more. Even unconscious, she deserved dignity. "Don't!" She tried to push his hands away, panic flaring in her one good eye. Clara, look at me." Jake waited until her gaze focused. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm cleaning your wounds, that's all. Your daughter is right there by the stove. You're safe." "Safe?" She laughed, but it came out as a sob. "I haven't been safe since Daniel died." "You're safe now." "You don't know, Marcus. You don't know what he's capable of." "Then tell me." So she did. While Jake cleaned the gash on her scalp and bound her cracked ribs, Clara talked. Her voice was weak, broken by coughs and gasps of pain, but the story poured out of her like poison from a wound. Daniel Whitmore had been the younger brother, the dreamer, the one who wanted to build something instead of just owning it. He'd brought Clara west from St. Louis, promised her adventure, promised her a home of her own. "He was good to me," Clara whispered. "Not perfect. Nobody is. But he was kind. He loved Lily more than his own breath." "What happened?" "His horse threw him. Out by the North Ridge. He was checking fence lines. The horse came back without him." Clara's hand found Jake's wrist, gripped tight. "I rode out the moment I saw. Found him at the bottom of a ravine. His back was broken. He couldn't feel his legs." Jake kept working, kept his hands steady, even as her story hollowed out his chest. "He begged me to stay with him, said he knew he was dying, said he didn't want to die alone." Tears carved tracks through the blood on Clara's face. "So I held him. I held him all night. By the time the sun came up, he was gone. And Marcus blamed you for not getting help. Marcus said if I'd ridden for the doctor instead of sitting there watching him die, Daniel might have lived. Said I wanted him dead so I could take the land." Clara's voice hardened. "The land Daniel left to me and Lily. The land Marcus has been trying to steal for 2 years." Lily appeared at Jake's elbow with a basin of hot water. Her face was pale but determined. "Is Mama gonna die?" Jake looked at Clara's injuries. Bad, but not fatal. Not if they didn't get infected. Not if she had time to heal. Not if I have anything to say about it. He worked through the morning, cleaning every wound, stitching the worst of the cuts, binding anything that needed binding. Lily helped without being asked, fetching fresh water, tearing claws into bandages, holding her mother's hand when the pain got too bad. By noon, Clara was asleep. Real sleep, not unconsciousness. Her breathing had steadied.
color was returning to her face beneath the bruises. Jake stepped onto the porch and let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for hours. Lily followed him out. She stood beside him, barely reaching his elbow, her small hands clasped in front of her.
Thank you for saving my mama.
She's not saved yet. She's got a long road to healing.
But she will heal?
Jake looked down at this child who'd run through the dark to find help, who'd face down her own terror to lead a stranger to her mother. 7 years old, and already braver than most men he'd known. Yeah, she'll heal.
What about Uncle Marcus?
The question hung between them, heavy and sharp. What about him?
He's gonna come back. He always does.
Lily's voice didn't waver.
When Papa was alive, Uncle Marcus used to visit, and they'd fight. Papa said Marcus wanted what wasn't his, said greed was a sickness, and Marcus had it bad.
Your papa was right. So what are we gonna do? Jake looked out at his ranch. The barn he'd built with his own hands. The corral where his horses grazed peaceful and unknowing. The mountains rising purple and eternal in the distance. 4 years he'd spent building this fortress of solitude. 4 years he'd kept the world at arm's length. Now the world had come knocking, in the form of a desperate child and her broken mother. We're gonna wait, Jake said finally. Your mama needs time to heal. You both need food and rest. And I need to know exactly what we're dealing with before I make any moves.
And then?
Jake's hand dropped to the pistol at his hip. And then, we'll see. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep on a pallet Jake made for her by the fire, he sat watching Clara in the lamplight. She looked younger in sleep, despite the bruises. Softer. Her dark hair spread across his pillow like a spill of ink. She wasn't beautiful, not in the way Emma had been. But there was something in her face, strength maybe, or stubbornness, that made Jake want to keep looking. He turned away. He'd learned this lesson before. Learned it when the fever took Emma in 3 days flat, when his son followed her into the ground a week later. Caring about people was a luxury he couldn't afford. But even as he told himself that, he knew it was already too late. The moment he'd opened his door to Lily's desperate knocking, he'd broken his own vow. The moment he'd lifted Clara's bleeding body and carried her to safety, he'd chosen a side. Whatever came next, he was in it now, for better or worse. Clara stirred, moaning softly. Jake crossed to the bed and found her eyes open, searching the unfamiliar room.
Lily. Sleeping by the fire. Safe.
Clara's gaze found his face and held it.
Why?
Why what?
Why did you help us? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything.
Jake thought about the question. He'd been asking himself the same thing since dawn. When your daughter knocked on my door, she said her mama was dying. Said men had hurt you. He paused. I've spent 4 years trying not to care about anyone or anything. Figured if I kept my distance, nothing could touch me.
And now?
Now I've got a woman bleeding in my bed and a child sleeping by my fire. And I guess I care whether you live or die. Jake's voice roughened. Guess I care more than I wanted to. Clara's hand reached for his. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong.
Thank you, she whispered, for caring, even if you didn't want to.
Jake let her hold his hand until she fell back asleep. Then he sat in his chair by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the night for any sign of movement. Marcus Whitmore would come. Men like him always did. They couldn't stand losing, couldn't tolerate being defied. But when he came, Jake would be ready. He'd made a choice this morning, whether he'd meant to or not. He'd chosen to open his door. chosen to ride to the rescue, chosen to bring these broken strangers into his home. Now he would choose to protect them, whatever the cost. 3 days passed before Clara could sit up on her own. Jake had slept in the chair every night, rifle across his knees, jerking awake at every sound. Lily had taken over the cooking. Simple things, beans and cornbread, but she did it without complaint. The child moved through his cabin like she'd always lived there, and Jake found himself making room for her without thinking. On the 4th morning, Clara's voice stopped him at the door. "Where are you going?" Jake turned. She was propped against the headboard, her one good eye clear for the first time since he'd found her. "Cattle need tending. I've been neglecting them. You've been taking care of us." "Same thing, I reckon." Clara's swollen lips twitched, almost a smile. "You're a strange man, Jake Brennan." "Been told that before." "I mean it as a compliment." Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. He grabbed his hat and headed for the door. "Jake." He stopped again. "Lily told me what you said, about choosing to care even when you didn't want to." Clara's voice was steady, but something raw flickered beneath it. "I know what that costs. I know what it means to open yourself up after you've been broken. You don't know anything about me. I know you lost someone. I can see it in your eyes." She paused. "I know that look because I wear it too." Jake's hand tightened on the doorframe. "I'll be back before noon. Keep the door barred." He walked out before she could say anything else. The cattle were fine. Jake checked fences he'd already checked, counted heads he'd already counted, did anything to keep his hands busy and his mind quiet. But Clara's words followed him across the pasture like ghosts. She'd seen through him. 3 days in his house, and she'd already found the wound he'd spent 4 years trying to hide. When Jake returned to the cabin, Lily was sitting on the porch with his old dog Scout. The hound had taken to the child immediately, following her everywhere, sleeping at the foot of her pallet each night. "Mama's awake," Lily said. "She's been asking for you." "What about?" "She wouldn't say. Just said she needed to talk to you alone." Jake found Clara standing by the window, one hand braced against the wall for support. She'd put on one of his spare shirts, it hung past her knees, and someone had brushed her hair back from her face. "You shouldn't be up." "I've been lying down for 4 days. I'm tired of being helpless." Being injured isn't being helpless. Feels the same from where I'm standing. Clara turned to face him. The bruises had faded from black to purple, the swelling around her eye going down. She looked more herself, stronger. "We need to talk about what happens next." "What happens next is you keep healing." "And then what? Jake, I can't stay here forever. People will talk. Your reputation." "My reputation doesn't keep me warm at night." The words came out harsher than he intended. "And I don't give a damn what people say." "You might not, but I do. I have a daughter to think about. If word gets around that I'm living with a man I'm not married to, Lily will carry that shame for the rest of her life." Jake pulled off his hat, ran a hand through his hair. She was right, and he hated it. "So what do you want to do?" "I want to go back to my land, my home, the cabin Daniel built for us." "Marcus burned it." Clara's face went white. "What?" "Lily told me. That night, after they hurt you, he burned the cabin to the ground." For a long moment, Clara didn't move, didn't breathe. Then something in her expression shifted from shock to fury. "That was my home. Daniel built it with his own hands. He carved our names above the door." Her voice shook. "That bastard.
That absolute bastard! Clara, everything we had was in that cabin. Lily's baby clothes, Daniel's books, the quilt my mother made for our wedding. She pressed her fist against her mouth. He took everything. Jake crossed the room and did something he hadn't done in 4 years. He pulled another person into his arms. Clara stiffened, then collapsed against him, her whole body shaking with silent sobs. Jake held her and said nothing. There was nothing to say. He knew this grief, knew the bottomless pit of losing everything you loved. Words couldn't fill that void. When Clara finally pulled back, her face was wet, but her jaw was set. I'm going to make him pay. I don't know how yet, but I swear to God, Jake Brennan, I'm going to make Marcus Whitmore pay for what he's done to my family. Not alone, you're not. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I'm choosing to. Jake met her eyes. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Understand? Clara stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Together. The riders came at dusk. Jake heard them before he saw them, hoofbeats drumming up the road from town. He grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch, positioning himself between the approaching horses and the cabin door. 4 men. Jake recognized the one in front, Sheriff Tom Wheeler, a weasel-faced man who'd been in Marcus Whitmore's pocket since the day he pinned on his badge. Evening, Brennan. Sheriff. Wheeler pulled his horse to a stop about 20 feet from the porch. His deputies fanned out behind him, hands resting on their pistols. Heard you've got some guests staying with you. News travels fast. In a small territory, it does. Wheeler's eyes flicked toward the cabin window. Marcus Whitmore came to see me this morning. Said his sister-in-law and niece went missing a few days back. Said he's worried sick about them. That's so. He also said you might know something about their whereabouts. Jake kept his rifle easy at his side, not threatening, but not hidden either. What else did Marcus say? Said Clara Whitmore has been having some troubles, mental troubles. Said she's been making wild accusations, claiming things that never happened. Wheeler shifted in his saddle. Said she might be dangerous. Dangerous. Jake's voice was flat. To who? To herself. To her daughter. Marcus is real concerned about that little girl's welfare. The cabin door opened behind Jake. He didn't turn, but he heard Clara's sharp intake of breath. I'm right here, Sheriff. Her voice rang out, clear and strong. And I'm about as dangerous as a church mouse. Wheeler's face tightened. Mrs. Whitmore, we've been looking for you. I know you have, looking to drag me back to Marcus so he can finish what he started. Clara stepped forward until she stood beside Jake. She was still wearing his oversized shirt, still bearing the visible marks of her beating. Take a good look, Sheriff. Do these bruises look like mental troubles to you? One of the deputies, younger than the others, with an honest face, shifted uncomfortably on his horse. Jesus, Wheeler, did you see? I see a woman who needs help, Wheeler cut in. Professional help. Marcus has arranged for a doctor from Cheyenne to examine her. Nice, quiet place where she can rest and recover. You mean an asylum? Jake's grip tightened on his rifle. You're going to lock her up and let Marcus take everything she has. Now hold on. No, you hold on. Jake stepped off the porch, putting himself directly in Wheeler's path. That woman has been beaten half to death. Her home's been burned. Her daughter watched it happen. And you ride up here talking about mental troubles and professional help? I'm just doing my job, Brennan. Your job is upholding the law, not helping Marcus Whitmore cover up assault and arson. Wheeler's face reddened. You watch your mouth. I could arrest you right now for obstructing justice. Try it. The air went thick and still. Jake could feel the deputies' hands moving toward their weapons, could feel Clara trembling beside him, could hear Lily's muffled crying from inside the cabin.
Gentlemen, a new voice broke the standoff. Perhaps we could all take a breath here. A fifth rider emerged from the tree line, an older man on a gray mare, wearing a minister's collar despite the dust on his clothes. Reverend Thomas Harding, the circuit preacher who came through every few weeks. Reverend, Wheeler's voice carried a note of surprise. This is official business. So I gathered. Harding dismounted and walked toward the group, his movements slow and deliberate. I also gathered that you're threatening to drag an injured woman from the home of the man who saved her life. That doesn't seem like justice to me, Sheriff. That seems like something else entirely. Marcus Whitmore is a powerful man with powerful friends. Yes, I know. Harding stopped beside Jake, his presence calm but immovable. I also know that Daniel Whitmore was a good man who loved his wife and daughter. And I know that Clara Whitmore has never been anything but kind and decent in all the years I've known her. Wheeler's jaw worked. The law? The law requires evidence, Sheriff. Due process, not midnight raids and forced commitments. Harding looked at each deputy in turn. You men have families, wives, daughters. How would you feel if someone treated them the way Marcus Whitmore has treated this woman? The young deputy spoke up again. Wheeler, maybe we should— Shut up, Harrison. Wheeler glared at Harding, then at Jake, then at Clara. This isn't over, not by a long shot. He wheeled his horse around and rode back the way he'd come. 3 of the deputies followed, but Harrison lingered, his eyes on Clara's battered face. Ma'am, he said quietly, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought— He shook his head. I'll do what I can. Then he too was gone. Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Thank you, Reverend. Don't thank me yet. Harding's expression was grim. Wheeler's right about one thing. This isn't over. Marcus Whitmore doesn't give up. He just finds another way. Clara's legs gave out. Jake caught her before she hit the ground, scooped her up, and carried her back inside. Lily rushed to her mother's side, her small face streaked with tears. Mama, are they going to take you away? No, baby. Nobody's taking me anywhere. But that man said— That man was lying. Clara gripped her daughter's hand. We're safe here. Mr.
Jake won't let anyone hurt us. Lily looked up at Jake with those 2 old eyes. Promise? Jake thought about what promises cost in this country. Thought about all the ways they could break a man when he couldn't keep them. Promise, he said anyway. Harding stayed for supper. Over beans and coffee, he told them what he knew. Marcus has been spreading his version of events all over the territory. Says Clara went mad with grief after Daniel died. Says she's been neglecting Lily, making wild accusations, threatening violence. That's a lie. Clara's voice was steady. Every word of it. I know it is, but Marcus has money, and money buys a lot of belief in these parts. Harding set down his cup. He's also been talking to Judge Patterson, hinting that Clara might need to be declared incompetent, that Lily might need a proper guardian. He wants to take my daughter? Clara's face went white. He wants everything. The land, the child, the last traces of his brother's legacy. Harding's voice darkened. I've known men like Marcus my whole life. They can't stand seeing others have what they want. It eats at them until they become capable of anything. Jake spoke up. What can we do? Legally, not much. Marcus has the sheriff, probably has the judge. The law in this territory belongs to whoever pays for it. So we're trapped. Not necessarily. Harding leaned forward. There's going to be a territorial council meeting in Cheyenne next month. Representatives from all the major ranches, businessmen, even a federal marshal. If you could get Clara's story in front of them, real evidence of what Marcus has done, it might be enough to turn the tide. Cheyenne's a 4-day ride, Jake said,
and Marcus will have men watching every road. Then you'll have to be smart about it. Harding stood, reaching for his hat. I'll do what I can from my end. Talk to people. Plant seeds of doubt. But the rest is up to you. After the Reverend left, Jake sat on the porch watching the stars come out. Clara joined him after putting Lily to bed, moving slowly but under her own power. You should rest. I've been resting. She lowered herself into the chair beside him. Besides, I can't sleep. Too much spinning in my head. They sat in silence for a while. The night sounds rose around them, crickets, an owl, the soft lowing of cattle in the distance. Can I ask you something? Clara's voice was quiet. Depends on the question. What happened to you? Before. The thing that made you build this wall around yourself. Jake's hands stilled on the rifle he'd been cleaning. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Her name was Emma. We'd been married 10 years when the fever came through. Took her in 3 days. He paused. Our boy, Samuel, he was 7, same age as Lily. He held on a week longer than his mother. I think he was waiting for me to tell him it was okay to let go. Clara's hand found his in the darkness. She didn't speak, just held on. After that, I came out here, built this place with my own hands. Told myself I'd never let anyone get close enough to hurt me again. Jake's voice roughened. Worked pretty well for 4 years. And then Lily knocked on your door. And then Lily knocked on my door. Clara's fingers tightened around his. I'm sorry for dragging you into this, for bringing my troubles to your doorstep. Don't be. Jake turned to look at her. In the starlight, with her bruises hidden by shadow, she looked almost peaceful. I was dying out here, Clara. Slow and quiet, but dying all the same. You and Lily, you reminded me what it feels like to have something worth fighting for. What happens now? Now we rest, we heal, we get strong. Jake's jaw set. And then we fight back. Together? Together. A week later, Clara was walking on her own. 2 weeks, and she'd taken over the household completely. Cooking, cleaning, mending Jake's clothes with neat, precise stitches. Lily followed Jake everywhere, peppering him with questions about the cattle, the horses, the land. Why do cows have spots? Different breeds, I reckon. Can I name them? They're cattle, not pets. But they have faces. Things with faces need names. Jake found himself smiling more than he had in years. But the peace couldn't last. They all knew it. Every day that passed without word from Marcus felt like borrowed time. A clock ticking down to something none of them wanted to name. The explosion came on a Sunday morning. Jake was in the barn when he heard the gunshot. He grabbed his rifle and ran, heart hammering, to find Clara standing on the porch with a smoking pistol in her hands. A man lay in the yard, clutching his leg and screaming. He came at me with a knife, Clara said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. I did what you taught me. Jake approached the wounded man and recognized him. One of Marcus's hired hands, a mean-eyed drifter named Cobb. Who sent you? Cobb spat blood and curses. Jake pressed his boot against the bullet wound. Cobb screamed louder. I asked you a question. Marcus! Marcus sent me. Said to bring the woman back, dead or alive. Didn't matter which. Jake looked at Clara. She stood tall, despite everything. The pistol still in her hands, her face pale but determined. Go back to your boss, Jake told Cobb. Tell him if he wants Clara Whitmore, he's going to have to come through me. You're a dead man, Brennan. You and the woman both. Marcus won't stop until... Get off my land. He watched Cobb limp away into the trees. Then he turned to Clara. You did good. I almost killed a man. You protected yourself. Protected Lily. Jake took the pistol from her trembling hands. That's not almost killing. That's surviving.
Clara looked at the blood in the dirt, at her own hands. This is what it's come to. Shooting men in my own yard.
It's what Marcus has made it.
When does it end?
Jake wished he had an answer, but all he could offer was the truth. When one side or the other has nothing left to fight with. That night, after Lily was asleep, Clara came to Jake where he sat keeping watch by the window.
Teach me more.
More what?
How to fight. How to shoot better. How to protect myself and my daughter without relying on you.
Jake studied her face in the lamplight. The determination there. The fear she refused to let win. It won't be easy.
Nothing worth doing ever is.
So he taught her. Every day when the chores were done, they practiced. Loading, aiming, firing. How to move quiet. How to watch for threats. How to turn everyday objects into weapons if she needed to. Clara learned fast. She had a natural steadiness, a patience that translated into deadly accuracy.
Within 2 weeks, she could put 3 shots in a row through the same hole at 50 yards.
You're a better shot than most men I've served with, Jake admitted.
Good. Then maybe I won't need you to save me next time.
That's the idea.
But even as he said it, Jake knew that wasn't the whole truth. He didn't want Clara to need him. But somewhere along the way, between the shooting lessons and the shared suppers and the quiet conversations after Lily fell asleep, he'd started needing her. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He was falling in love with her. And that terrified him more than Marcus Whitmore ever could. 3 nights later, Jake woke to the smell of smoke. He was on his feet before his eyes fully opened, rifle in hand, instincts screaming. Through the window, he could see flames licking at the barn. Clara, take Lily and get to the root cellar, now!
He burst out the front door and nearly ran straight into a wall of men. 6 of them, maybe 7, armed and waiting. Marcus Whitmore sat on his horse behind them, his face twisted into a smile.
Evening, Brennan. I think it's time we had ourselves a talk.
Jake didn't lower his rifle. That's close enough, Whitmore. Marcus laughed, a cold sound that matched his eyes. You're outnumbered 7-1, Brennan. That rifle won't do you much good. Maybe not, but I'll take at least 3 of you with me before I go down. Jake swept his gaze across the men. Question is, which 3? The hired guns shifted uneasily. Jake recognized fear when he saw it. These men were paid to intimidate, not to die.
Where's Clara? Marcus asked.
Gone. Sent her and the girl away 2 days ago. You're lying. Am I? Jake kept his voice level. Search the cabin if you want. You won't find them. Marcus's jaw tightened. He nodded to 2 of his men. They dismounted and headed toward the cabin, kicking in the door. Jake's heart hammered in his chest.
If Clara hadn't made it to the root cellar in time. A crash from inside, then another. The men emerged empty-handed.
Nothing, boss. Place is empty. Jake allowed himself to breathe. Seems I was telling the truth after all. She's here somewhere. Marcus's eyes swept the property. The root cellar. Check the root cellar. Already did. Just potatoes and preserves. Jake silently thanked whatever instinct had made him build that hidden compartment beneath the cellar floor. Clara and Lily were down there now, barely breathing, waiting for this nightmare to end. So what now? Jake asked. You've burned my barn, scared off my cattle, made your point. Why don't you take your men and ride back to whatever hole you crawled out of? Marcus dismounted and walked toward Jake, stopping just out of arm's reach. Up close, the family resemblance to Daniel was unmistakable. The same strong jaw, the same dark eyes. But where Daniel had been warm, Marcus was cold. Where Daniel had built, Marcus destroyed. You've caused me a lot of trouble, Brennan. A lot of expense. My heart bleeds. It will, Marcus smiled. See, I've been patient. I've tried to handle this quietly. But you and that whore have made that impossible. Jake's finger tightened on the trigger. Call her that again. What? Whore? Marcus tilted his head. That's what she is. She seduced my brother, convinced him to leave her everything, then let him die when he became inconvenient. Now she's done the same to you. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? 4 years you've lived out here alone. Then, suddenly, a pretty widow shows up on your doorstep, and you're willing to die for her? Marcus shook his head. She's good, I'll give her that. My brother never stood a chance. Daniel loved her. Daniel was a fool, Marcus's voice hardened. He took our father's land that should have been mine, and gave it to a woman he'd known for 6 months. A woman who couldn't even give him a son. Just that useless girl. Something snapped inside Jake. He swung the rifle butt hard and fast, catching Marcus across the jaw. The man went down, and Jake was on top of him before the hired guns could react. That useless girl is 7 years old. Jake pressed the rifle barrel against Marcus's throat. She watched you beat her mother. She ran through the dark for miles to find help. She's got more courage in her little finger than you've got in your whole body. Guns clicked behind him. Jake didn't care. You're going to tell your men to stand down. Then you're going to ride out of here and never come back. Marcus laughed, blood bubbling from his split lip. Or what? You'll shoot me? If I have to. Then do it. Marcus's eyes gleamed with something like triumph. Go ahead. Pull that trigger. But know this. My men have orders. If anything happens to me, they burn everything. The cabin, the cattle, and they don't stop looking until they find Clara and that brat. Jake's finger trembled on the trigger. He wanted to do it. God help him, he wanted to end this right now. Jake, don't! Clara's voice cut through the night. Jake turned to see her emerging from the shadows behind the cabin. Lily clutched against her side. Both of them had come out of hiding. Clara, get back! No! She walked toward them, her head high despite the terror in her eyes. This has to end, but not like this. Marcus pushed himself up onto his elbows. Well, well, the whore appears. I'm not a whore. Clara's voice was steady. I'm a widow, a mother, a woman you tried to murder because you couldn't stand that your brother loved me more than he loved you. He didn't love you. He was bewitched by you. He chose me, Marcus. He chose me over your bitterness and your greed. That's what eats at you, isn't it? Not the land, not the money, the fact that Daniel saw exactly what you are, and he wanted nothing to do with it. Marcus's face contorted. You lying! I was there when he died. Clara's voice cracked, but she kept going. I held him. He told me to tell you. He said he forgave you. For everything. He said he hoped someday you'd find peace. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across Marcus's face. Pain. Regret. The ghost of the brother he'd lost. Then it was gone. Daniel was always weak. Marcus spat blood. Sentimental. He couldn't see what needed to be done. And what's that? Beating women? Terrorizing children? Burning down everything your brother built? Clara shook her head. Daniel wasn't weak, Marcus. He was kind. There's a difference. Kindness doesn't build empires. No, but it builds families. It builds homes. It builds things worth having. Clara's eyes filled with tears. You could have been part of that. Daniel wanted you to be. But you chose this instead. The silence stretched out, heavy and sharp. Jake watched Marcus's face, watched the war playing out behind those cold eyes. Then Marcus laughed. "You almost had me, Clara. Almost made me feel something." He pushed himself to his feet, wiping blood from his chin. "But you're wrong about one thing. I didn't choose this. You did. The moment you turned my brother against his own family. I never—" "Enough!" Marcus signaled to his men. "Burn the cabin. All of it. And bring me the woman." Everything happened at once. Jake raised his rifle, but someone tackled him from behind. He went down hard, the weapon flying from his hands. Fists connected with his face, his ribs, his gut. He fought back blind, landing blows where he could, but there were too many of them. Through the chaos, he heard Clara scream, "Mama!" Lily's voice cut through the violence like a blade. Jake twisted, caught a glimpse of two men dragging Clara toward Marcus. She kicked and clawed, but they held her fast.
"Let her go!"
Lily threw herself at one of the men, her small fists pounding uselessly against his legs.
"Let my mama go!"
The man shoved her away. Lily hit the ground hard and didn't get up. Something broke loose inside Jake. He surged upward with strength he didn't know he had, throwing off the men who held him. His hand found a rock, and he swung it hard against the nearest skull. The man dropped. Jake grabbed his gun and fired. One of the men holding Clara fell. The other released her and went for his weapon. Clara drove her elbow into his throat before he could draw. He doubled over, gasping, and she grabbed his pistol.
"Clara, get Lily!"
She ran for her daughter while Jake provided cover fire. Two more of Marcus's men went down, one dead, one wounded. The others scattered for cover. Marcus stood frozen, watching his carefully laid plan fall apart. "This isn't over," he screamed. "You hear me, Clara? This will never be over." Jake put a bullet in the dirt an inch from Marcus's boots. "Run, now, before I aim higher." Marcus ran. He scrambled onto his horse and fled into the darkness, his remaining men following close behind. Jake kept firing until they were out of range, until the hoofbeats faded into silence, until his gun clicked empty on a spent chamber. Then his legs gave out. He collapsed in the dirt, every part of him screaming with pain. Blood ran down his face from a gash above his eye. At least 2 ribs were cracked. His hands shook so badly he couldn't have held the gun even if it was loaded. "Jake!" Clara was beside him, her hands on his face, in his hair. Lily pressed close on his other side, her small body trembling. "I'm all right." His voice came out as a croak. "I'm all right."
"You're not all right. You're bleeding everywhere."
"Just scratches."
"Jake Brennan, don't you dare lie to me right now."
He laughed, and the movement sent fire through his ribs. "Okay, maybe a little more than scratches." They got him inside, what was left of inside, with the door kicked in and furniture overturned. Clara helped him onto the bed while Lily fetched water and bandages. "This feels familiar," Jake muttered, "except the roles are reversed." Clara didn't smile. "You could have died." "Could have. Didn't. Because you're lucky. Because I had something worth fighting for." Her hands stilled on his chest. "Jake." "I know this isn't the time. I know everything's falling apart. But I need you to know." He caught her hand, held it against his heart. "These past weeks, having you here, having Lily, I remember what it feels like to be alive. Not just breathing, but living. You gave me that, both of you." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm the reason you almost died tonight." "No, Marcus is the reason. His greed, his cruelty, not you." Jake pulled her closer. "Never you." She leaned down and pressed her forehead to his. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together, holding on.
"He'll come back,"
Clara whispered.
"I know. He'll bring more men. Probably. We should run, get out of the territory, start over somewhere he can't find us. Jake was quiet for a moment. Is that what you want? No. Clara pulled back, and her eyes were fierce. What I want is to stand my ground, to stop running, to make him pay for everything he's done. Then that's what we'll do. How? He has money, men, the law on his side. We have nothing. We have each other. We have the truth. Jake touched her face. And we have friends we haven't called on yet. Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes huge. Is Papa going to be okay? Clara and Jake both froze. The child had never called him that before. I mean, Lily's face reddened. I didn't mean to say. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Jake's voice was thick. Come here. Lily crossed the room and climbed onto the bed beside him. Jake wrapped one arm around her and pulled her close. Yeah, little bit. I'm going to be okay. She buried her face against his chest. I was so scared. When those men came and they were hurting you. I know. You were brave. You were so brave. I couldn't do anything. I'm too small. You're not too small. Jake tilted her chin up. You're exactly the right size to be the bravest person I've ever met. You know why? Why? Because it doesn't take size to have courage. It takes heart. And you've got the biggest heart in all of Wyoming territory. Lily smiled through her tears. You really think so? I know so. Clara watched them together, her expression caught between grief and hope. What do we do now? Jake thought about it. About Marcus's threats, about the burned barn, about the long road still ahead of them. First, we rest. Tomorrow, I need to ride into town, talk to some people. That's dangerous. Everything's dangerous now. Might as well be dangerous on our terms. Morning came too quickly. Jake's body screamed in protest when he tried to move, but he forced himself up anyway. Clara had coffee waiting. She'd been up for hours, he could tell. You shouldn't go alone. I'll be fine. Jake? Someone needs to stay with Lily. Someone she trusts. He cupped her face in his hands. I'll be back before sundown. I promise. You make a lot of promises. I keep them, too. The ride into town took longer than usual. Every jostle sent pain shooting through Jake's damaged ribs. But he kept going, pushing through, because stopping wasn't an option. Redemption Falls looked the same as always. Horses tied outside the saloon, women in their Sunday best walking to church, children playing in the dusty streets. Nobody seemed to know that the world had shifted on its axis overnight. Jake's first stop was Reverend Harding's small church at the edge of town. The preacher looked up from his Bible when Jake walked in. His eyes widened at the sight of Jake's battered face. Good Lord, what happened? Marcus Whitmore happened, last night. Came to my ranch with 7 men. Clara and the girl. Safe. For now. Jake sat down heavily in a pew. But we need help, Reverend. Real help. I can't fight him alone. Harding set aside his Bible. What do you need? Witnesses. People willing to testify to what Marcus has done. The beatings, the arson, the threats. Enough evidence to make even Judge Patterson sit up and take notice. That's a tall order. Most folks in this town are scared of Marcus. And some folks aren't, Jake leaned forward. You've been here longer than me. You know who they are. The ones with backbone. The ones who won't stand by while a woman and child are terrorized. Harding was quiet for a long moment. There's Jim Cooper. Lost his ranch to Marcus's business dealings 3 years back. Never proved anything,
but everyone knows Marcus cheated him. Who else? Margaret O'Brien at the boarding house? Her husband died owing Marcus money. Marcus tried to force her out, but she stood her ground. She's got no love for the man. Anyone else? Maybe, but it's dangerous, Jake. If Marcus finds out people are talking, he's already tried to kill us. How much more dangerous can it get? Jake spent the rest of the day making rounds. He talked to Jim Cooper, who was eager for payback. He talked to Margaret O'Brien, who listened with hard eyes and offered her boarding house as a meeting place. He talked to the young deputy, Harrison, who'd been haunted by what he'd seen at Jake's ranch. "Wheeler's not a bad man," Harrison said. "He's just scared. Marcus has been holding something over him for years." "What something?" "Don't know exactly, but whatever it is, Wheeler's afraid it'll destroy him." By late afternoon, Jake had gathered 6 people willing to stand against Marcus Whitmore. Not an army, but a start. He was heading back to his horse when a voice stopped him cold. "Brennan." Jake turned to find Sheriff Wheeler standing in the alley between the general store and the bank. The man looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. His face was gray, his hands trembling. "Sheriff, I know what you're doing. Word travels fast in the small town." "And?" Wheeler glanced around, making sure they were alone. "Marcus came to see me this morning. Told me what happened at your place last night. Told me to arrest you for assault and attempted murder." Jake's hand moved toward his gun. "You going to do it?" "No." Wheeler's voice cracked. "I'm done. I'm done with all of it." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Marcus has had me under his thumb for 15 years. Did things for him I'm not proud of. Looked the other way when I shouldn't have." Wheeler's eyes were wet. "But there's a line, and hurting women and children, that's on the other side of it. So what now?" "Now I give you this." Wheeler pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "It's a letter, in my own hand. Everything I've done for Marcus Whitmore since he came to this territory. Every law I bent, every crime I covered up, every person I failed." Jake took the paper, but didn't unfold it. "Why?" "Because I'm tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of being a coward." Wheeler straightened his shoulders. "I won't survive this. Marcus will kill me when he finds out. But maybe this can help make things right." Jake looked at this broken man, this corrupt lawman who'd finally found his spine at the worst possible moment. "Thank you, Sheriff." "Don't thank me. Just keep that woman and her little girls safe. They deserve better than what this territory's given them." Jake rode home with Wheeler's confession in his pocket, and a plan forming in his mind. It wasn't much, but it was something. A way forward. A chance. The sun was setting when he reached the ranch. Clara must have been watching for him, because she came running the moment he dismounted. "Thank God!" She threw her arms around him, holding tight despite his grunt of pain. "I was so worried." "I'm fine. Better than fine." He pulled back and looked at her face. "I think we've got a chance, Clara. A real chance." "What did you find?" "People. People willing to stand with us." He pulled out Wheeler's letter. "And this." Clara read it, her eyes growing wider with each line. When she finished, her hands were shaking. Jake, this is everything. If we can get this to the right people." "That's exactly what we're going to do." Lily appeared on the porch, Scout at her heels. "Did you bring anything from town?" Jake smiled. "Just good news, little bit. And hope. Lots of hope." That night, they gathered around the kitchen table and made plans. Clara would ride to Cheyenne with Harding to present Wheeler's evidence to the federal marshal. Jake would stay behind to protect the ranch and coordinate with their new allies.
"It'll take at least 4 days," Clara said. "Maybe 5 if the weather turns."
"I'll be here when you get back."
"Promise?"
"Promise." Lily had fallen asleep at the table, her head pillowed on her arms. Jake lifted her gently and carried her to her bed by the fire. When he turned back, Clara was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What?"
"You're good with her. Natural."
"She makes it easy." Clara crossed the room and stood before him, close enough to touch, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin.
"Jake Brennan, I need to tell you something."
"I'm listening."
"I've been scared for so long. Scared of Marcus, scared of losing Lily, scared of trusting anyone."
She reached up and touched his face.
"But I'm not scared with you. You make me feel safe.
"You make me feel like I might be able to be happy again." Jake covered her hand with his.
"Clara, I know the timing is terrible. I know we're in the middle of a war, but I need you to know that when this is over, if we survive it, I want to build something with you. Something real. If you want that too."
Jake pulled her close and kissed her. Soft at first, then deeper, until both of them were breathless.
"I want that,"
he murmured against her lips. "I want that more than I've wanted anything in a long time." They held each other in the quiet cabin, the fire crackling low, their daughter sleeping peacefully nearby. Outside, the night stretched, vast and uncertain, full of dangers still to come. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They'd found each other against all odds. They'd fought together, bled together, chosen each other in the face of violence and fear. Whatever came next, they'd face it the same way. Together. Clara left at first light. Jake stood on the porch and watched her ride away with Reverend Harding, Wheeler's confession tucked safe in her saddlebag. She turned once to look back, her face pale but determined, and raised her hand in farewell. Jake raised his in return. "She'll be okay, right?" Lily stood beside him, scout pressed against her legs. Her voice was small but steady. "She'll be fine. The Reverend knows backroads Marcus's men won't think to watch." "But what if they find her?" "They won't." Jake put his hand on her shoulder. "Your mama's smart and tough. She'll get to Cheyenne, and she'll come back with help. We just have to hold on until then." "How long?" 4 days, maybe 5. Lily nodded slowly. "I can be brave for 5 days. I know you can." The first day passed quiet. Jake kept watch, rifle always within reach, while Lily helped with chores around the ranch. They fed the chickens that had survived the barn fire. They checked on the cattle. They patched the holes Marcus's men had kicked in the cabin walls. That night, Jake taught Lily to play cards by firelight. "Papa taught me once," she said, studying her hand. "Before he died. He said a good poker face is important in life." He was right. "Do you have a good poker face?" Jake showed her his hand. Nothing but low cards and mismatched suits. "What do you think?" Lily giggled. "I think you need practice." The second day brought visitors. Jim Cooper rode up mid-morning with his son, a strapping young man of 19 with his father's stubborn jaw. "Heard Marcus is gathering men," Cooper said. "Word in town is he's planning something big." Jake's gut tightened. "How big?" "Dozen riders, maybe more. Some of them hired guns from up north. Real professionals." "When?" "Don't know for sure, but soon. He's not waiting for Clara to reach Cheyenne." Jake looked at Lily, who'd gone still and pale. "Cooper, can you take her to Margaret O'Brien's? Keep her safe in town?" "No," Lily grabbed Jake's arm. "I'm not leaving you." "Lily, you promised we'd face everything together. You promised." "That was before." "I don't care." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Mama trusted you to keep us safe.
Both of us. If you send me away and something happens to you, she'll never forgive herself, and neither will I."
Jake looked at this fierce, terrified child. 7 years old and already facing more than most adults could bear. "She's right," Cooper said quietly. "Besides, if Marcus is watching the roads, she might be safer here than trying to reach town." Jake knelt down to Lily's level. "If things go bad, you run. You hide in that cellar and you don't come out for anyone but me or your mama. Understand?"
"I understand."
"Promise me."
"I promise."
Cooper and his son stayed. So did Margaret O'Brien, who arrived that afternoon with a shotgun across her lap and fire in her eyes.
"Don't look at me like that," she said when Jake tried to send her home. "I've been waiting 15 years to see Marcus Whitmore get what's coming to him. I'm not missing it now."
By nightfall, their small force had grown to 8. Not enough to match Marcus's hired guns, but enough to make him think twice. "We'll take shifts on watch," Jake said. 2 at a time. Nobody sleeps without someone else awake.
"And if they come?"
Cooper's son asked. "We hold them off as long as we can. Buy time for Clara to reach Cheyenne."
"That's not much of a plan."
"It's the only plan we've got." The third day dawned gray and heavy with the promise of rain. Jake was on the porch when he saw the dust cloud rising on the eastern road. His blood went cold. "They're coming!" Everyone scrambled for positions. Cooper and his son took the windows on the east side of the cabin. Margaret stationed herself at the back door. The others spread out along the fence line, using what cover they could find. Lily pressed herself into the corner of the main room, Scout whimpering at her feet. "Remember what I said," Jake told her. "If things go bad—"
"I know, the cellar."
He kissed the top of her head. "Your mama would be proud of you."
"Will you tell her that, when she gets back?"
"You'll tell her yourself." The riders came over the ridge like a wave. Jake counted 13, 14, 15. More than they'd expected. More than they could handle. Marcus rode at the front, flanked by men with dead eyes and professional stillness. These weren't the local thugs from before. These were killers. "Brennan!" Marcus's voice carried across the yard. "It's over. Give me Clara's daughter, and I'll let the rest of you walk away." "She's not here," Jake shouted back. "Clara took her to Cheyenne days ago." "You're lying. I've had men watching every road out of the territory. Nobody's passed through." Jake's heart stopped. If Marcus's men had seen Clara— "Doesn't matter," Marcus continued. "I'll burn this place to the ground and sift through the ashes if I have to. One way or another, I'm ending this today." "Then come and end it." Marcus smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." He raised his hand, and his men drew their weapons. The first shot came from Cooper's son, catching one of the hired guns in the shoulder. After that, everything dissolved into chaos. Jake fired and reloaded, his world narrowing to the thunder of guns and the acrid smell of gunpowder. He saw one of their own go down, a farmer named Peters, who joined them just that morning. He saw Margaret take a bullet in the arm and keep shooting. But they were losing. Outnumbered and outgunned, being pushed back step by bloody step. "Fall back to the cabin!" Jake screamed. "Everyone inside!" They retreated through a hail of bullets. Cooper dragged his wounded son through the door. Margaret stumbled in behind them, her face gray with pain. Jake came last, slamming and barring the door as wood splintered around him. "How many did we get?" Cooper gasped. 3, maybe 4. Jake moved to the window, risking a look outside. "Not enough." Marcus's remaining men were spreading out, surrounding the cabin. They had time. They had ammunition. They could wait.
"What now?"
Margaret asked. Jake looked around the room, at the wounded and the exhausted, at Lily, curled in her corner with her arms around Scout. Now we hold out as long as we can. The siege lasted hours. Marcus's men took shots at the cabin whenever someone moved near a window. Twice they tried to rush the door. Twice, Jake and the others drove them back. But ammunition was running low. 2 more of their people had been hit. The cabin walls were more holes than wood now, and night was falling fast. "We can't last until morning," Cooper said. His voice was hollow. "We're out of options." Jake knew he was right. They'd fought hard, but it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. "There might be another way." Everyone turned to look at him. "Marcus doesn't want all of you. He wants Clara, and since she's not here, he wants me. I'm the one who defied him. I'm the one who made him look weak." Jake took a breath. "If I surrender, he might let the rest of you go." "That's insane," Margaret said. "He'll kill you." "Probably. But Lily will be safe. You'll all be safe." "Jake, no." Lily's voice cut through the room. She pushed herself up and walked toward him, her small face fierce. "You can't. Mama's counting on you. I'm counting on you. I'm trying to protect you." "You're trying to give up." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Papa gave up. When he fell off that horse and broke his back, he gave up. He told Mama to let him go. And she did, because she loved him too much to make him suffer." "Lily, but you're not broken, Jake. You're still standing. You can still fight." She grabbed his hand with both of hers. "Please, don't leave me too." Jake looked at this child who'd lost so much, who'd been brave beyond her years, who was begging him to stay. He couldn't do it, couldn't walk out that door and leave her. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, I'm staying." "Promise?" "Promise." A shout from outside interrupted them, but it wasn't Marcus's voice. It was someone else. Someone... "Federal Marshal, everyone drop your weapons!" Jake rushed to the window. Riders were pouring over the ridge, dozens of them. And at the front, unmistakable even in the fading light, rode Clara. "She made it," Jake breathed. "She actually made it." Marcus's men were scrambling, some throwing down their guns, others trying to flee. But there was nowhere to run. The marshal's deputies spread out in a perfect circle, cutting off every escape route. Jake threw open the cabin door and stepped onto the porch. Clara had already dismounted. She was running toward him, her hair loose and wild, her face alight with desperate relief. "Jake!" He caught her in his arms and held on like she was the only solid thing in a world gone liquid. She was shaking. Or maybe he was. Maybe both of them. "You're alive!" she gasped. "Thank God! Thank God!" "You came back." "I promised I would." "Mama!" Lily burst through the door and threw herself at Clara. Mother and daughter collapsed together, clutching each other, crying and laughing at the same time. Jake watched them and felt something crack open in his chest. Not pain this time. Something else. Something he'd thought he'd forgotten how to feel. "Mr. Brennan." He turned to find a tall man with a silver star in his chest approaching. Federal Marshal Thomas Reed, if the rumors about Cheyenne's new lawman were true. "That's me." "Your wife told me quite a story on the ride here." Reed's eyes swept over the bullet-riddled cabin, the wounded defenders, the blood in the dirt. "Looks like she wasn't exaggerating." "She's not my wife." "Not yet, from what I understand." Reed almost smiled. "Mrs. Whitmore is a persuasive woman. Rode into Cheyenne half dead from exhaustion, demanded to see me personally, and didn't stop talking until I agreed to bring every deputy I could spare." "Where's Marcus?" "In custody, along with what's left of his men." Reed's expression hardened. Between the evidence Mrs. Whitmore brought and the testimony of Sheriff Wheeler... Wheeler? He rode into Cheyenne an hour after Mrs. Whitmore. Said he couldn't live with himself anymore. Told us everything. Reed shook his head. Marcus Whitmore is finished. He'll hang for what he's done, or spend the rest of his life in prison. Either way, he'll never hurt anyone again. The words should have brought relief. They did, somewhere deep down. But mostly, Jake just felt tired, bone-deep exhausted, in a way that had nothing to do with the battle, and everything to do with the weeks of fear and tension finally releasing. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now? You rest. You heal. You rebuild." Reed looked toward Clara and Lily, still wrapped in each other's arms. "And maybe you think about making an honest woman of her. Lord knows she's earned it." The marshal walked away to supervise his deputies. Jake stood alone on his porch, watching the chaos slowly resolve into order. Clara appeared beside him. Her hand found his and held tight. "You did it," Jake said. "We did it." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was so scared. The whole ride to Cheyenne, I kept thinking about what was happening here. What Marcus might be doing to you and Lily. He tried, didn't succeed. Because you wouldn't let him. Because I had something worth fighting for." Clara looked up at him. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "He keeps saying that." "Because it keeps being true." Lily squeezed between them, wrapping her arms around both their waists. "Is it really over?" she asked. Jake looked at the deputies leading Marcus away in chains, at his neighbors and friends being tended for their wounds, at the cabin that was barely standing, but still standing. "Yeah, little bit. It's really over." "What happens now?" Clara and Jake exchanged a look. Something passed between them, a question asked and answered without words. "Now," Clara said, "we figure out what comes next. Together." The cleanup took the rest of the night and most of the following day. Deputy Harrison organized crews to gather the wounded and collect the dead. Margaret O'Brien, arm bandaged but spirit unbroken, took charge of feeding everyone. Jim Cooper's son, despite his own injuries, insisted on helping rebuild the fence Marcus's men had torn down. Jake worked alongside them all, too tired to feel much of anything, but too restless to sit still. Clara found him at sunset, standing alone by what was left of the barn. "You should rest." "Can't seem to." "I know the feeling." She moved to stand beside him. "Marshal Reed is leaving in the morning, taking Marcus and the others to stand trial in Cheyenne." "Good." "He asked if we wanted to testify." "Do we?" I told him no. Clara's voice was firm. "I've spent 2 years being afraid of Marcus Whitmore. I don't want to spend another minute giving him power over my life. Wheeler's confession is enough. The marshal's evidence is enough. We don't need to be there to watch him fall." Jake nodded slowly. "Then we stay here." "If that's what you want." He turned to look at her. Really look at her. At the woman who'd crawled to his door half dead and scared, who'd healed under his roof and found her strength again, who'd ridden across the territory to save his life the way he'd once saved hers. "I want to marry you." Clara's breath caught. "Jake." "I know it's fast. I know we haven't even known each other 2 months. But I've spent 4 years being alone, Clara. 4 years convincing myself that was what I wanted. Then you and Lily came along and showed me everything I was missing. We came with so much trouble." "I don't care about the trouble. I care about you. I care about that little girl who calls me Papa and follows me around asking questions about cows." Jake took her hands. "I care about waking up with you beside me and going to sleep knowing you're there. I care about building something that lasts." "Are you sure? Because once you're stuck with us, there's no going back." "I've never been more sure of anything." Clara laughed, and the sound was like water in the desert.
Then yes, I'll marry you, Jake Brennan.
He kissed her, and the world fell away. There was only this moment, this woman, this second chance he'd never expected to get. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying.
We should tell Lily, Clara said.
She already knows. Jake pointed toward the cabin, where a small face was pressed against the window, watching them with undisguised glee. That child sees everything.
She's got good eyes.
They walked back to the cabin hand in hand. Lily met them at the door, bouncing with excitement she couldn't contain.
Are you getting married? Are you? I saw you kissing. Does that mean—
Yes, Clara said. We're getting married. Lily screamed with joy and threw herself at them. Jake caught her and swung her up, holding her close while Clara wrapped her arms around them both.
We're going to be a real family, Lily said. A real one.
We already are, Jake told her. We have been for a while now. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep and the house had gone quiet, Jake and Clara sat on the porch watching the stars come out.
I keep waiting to wake up, Clara said, waiting for something to go wrong.
Nothing's going to go wrong.
You don't know that.
No, but I know that whatever comes, we'll handle it. That's what families do. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. When I sent Lily to find help that night, I never imagined this. I just wanted to survive. Wanted her to survive. I never dreamed we'd end up here. Where's here?
Safe. Loved. Happy.
She looked up at him.
Home.
Jake pulled her closer. You know, when I first came to this ranch, I was running away. From grief. From fear. From the possibility of ever feeling anything again.
And now?
Now I'm not running anymore. He kissed her forehead. Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. They sat together as the night deepened around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The ranch needed rebuilding. The community needed healing. Their wedding needed planning. But all of that could wait. Tonight, there was only this. The quiet peace of two broken people who'd found each other. The sleeping child who'd brought them together. The promise of a future neither of them had dared to hope for. Jake Brennan had opened his door to a desperate knock at dawn. He'd made a choice that changed everything. And he would make that choice again, 1,000 times over, without hesitation. Because some choices weren't really choices at all. They were simply recognitions of what was already true. Clara and Lily belonged with him. He belonged with them. Everything else was just details. The wedding was set for Sunday. Reverend Harding agreed to perform the ceremony at the ranch, under the cottonwood tree where Jake had first taught Lily to ride. It felt right somehow. A place of new beginnings marking another new beginning. Clara spent the week before in a whirlwind of preparation. Margaret O'Brien arrived with bolts of fabric and insisted on making her a proper dress. Sarah Cooper, Jim's wife, brought wildflowers from her garden. Even the women who'd whispered about Clara in town showed up with food and offers of help. "People surprise you," Margaret said, watching Clara try on the nearly finished dress. "They spend months being cruel, then turn around and show up when it matters. I don't understand it." "Don't try to. Just accept it." Margaret adjusted a seam. "This territory is hard. People get hard to match. But underneath, most of them remember what's right." Jake stayed out of the preparations. He had his own work to do. The barn needed rebuilding. The fence needed mending. The cattle needed tending. He threw himself into the labor, grateful for something to do with his hands, while his mind raced ahead to Sunday. "You're nervous," Lily observed, watching him hammer a nail into the new barn frame. "I'm not nervous." "You missed that nail 3 times." Jake looked down. She was right. The nail was bent sideways, and his thumb was throbbing. Maybe a little nervous.
Why? You love Mama.
She loves you. What's there to be nervous about? It's complicated. Grown-ups always say that. Lily handed him another nail. But it's not really complicated. You just make it complicated because you think too much. Jake laughed despite himself. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just didn't notice. The night before the wedding, Jake couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch, watching the stars and thinking about Emma, about the life they'd built together and the way it had ended, about the years of silence that followed. Room for one more? Clara appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm night. Couldn't sleep either? Too many thoughts. She settled into the chair beside him. Good thoughts mostly, but loud. What kind of thoughts? About tomorrow, about what it means. Clara pulled the blanket tighter. About Daniel. Jake went still. What about him? I loved him, Jake. Not the way I love you, but I did love him. And tomorrow, I'm going to stand up in front of God and everyone and promise myself to another man. Her voice caught. Part of me feels like I'm betraying him. You're not. I know. In my head, I know. But my heart. She pressed a hand to her chest. My heart still remembers. Jake reached over and took her hand. Daniel would want you to be happy. You said so yourself. I know, but wanting something and being at peace with it are different things. Then let me ask you this. Jake turned to face her. If it was the other way around, if you'd died and Daniel survived, would you want him to spend the rest of his life alone? No, of course not. Would you want Lily to grow up without a father? No. Then why would Daniel want any different for you? Clara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. You're right. I know you're right. It's just... letting go is hard. Nobody's asking you to let go. Daniel's part of who you are, part of who Lily is. That doesn't change because you're marrying me. Jake squeezed her hand. I'm not trying to replace him, Clara. I'm just trying to build something new, something that honors what came before, while looking toward what comes after. When did you get so wise? 4 years alone gives a man time to think. Clara leaned over and kissed him softly. Thank you for understanding, for not being jealous or threatened. I'm not threatened by a ghost. I'm grateful to him. He gave you to the world. He gave you Lily. Without him, I'd still be out here alone, pretending that was enough. They sat together until the sky began to lighten. Then Clara went inside to rest, and Jake watched the sun rise on the last morning of his solitary life. He wasn't afraid anymore. The ceremony was simple and perfect. Jake stood under the cottonwood tree in his best suit, the one he'd worn to Emma's funeral and hadn't touched since. Reverend Harding stood beside him, Bible in hand, and gathered around them were the people who'd fought alongside them, bled alongside them, chosen to stand with them against impossible odds. When Clara appeared on Jim Cooper's arm, Jake forgot how to breathe. She wore a dress of pale blue, the color of the summer sky. Her dark hair was pinned up with wildflowers, and she carried a bouquet of roses from Margaret's garden. But it wasn't the dress or the flowers that stopped his heart. It was her face, the joy there, the certainty, the love that shone from her eyes like light from a lamp. She'd never looked more beautiful. Lily walked ahead of her mother, scattering flower petals with solemn concentration. When she reached Jake, she looked up at him with those two old eyes. Don't mess this up, she whispered. I'll do my best. Clara took her place beside him, and Reverend Harding began to speak. The words washed over Jake like water. Familiar phrases about love and commitment, about forsaking all others, about holding fast through good times and bad. He'd said these words before, to another woman, in another life. They'd meant everything then. They meant even more now. "Do you, Jacob Brennan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Clara Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara's voice rang out clear and strong. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Harding smiled. "You may kiss your bride." Jake pulled Clara close and kissed her while their friends cheered. Lily threw herself at them both, and Jake scooped her up with one arm while keeping the other around his wife. His wife. The word felt strange and wonderful and absolutely right. "We did it," Clara whispered against his ear. "We did."
"What now?" Jake looked at the gathered crowd, at the ranch spread out behind them, at the little girl in his arms and the woman at his side. "Now, we live." The celebration lasted well into the night. Someone produced a fiddle. Someone else brought out a jug of whiskey. Tables were set up in the yard, loaded with food from half the kitchens in the territory. People danced and laughed and told stories. And for a few hours, the hardships of frontier life faded into the background. Jake danced with Clara until his feet ached. He danced with Lily, lifting her up and spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. He even danced with Margaret O'Brien, who turned out to be surprisingly light on her feet for a woman of her age. "You did good, Brennan," she told him. "That woman deserved a second chance. So did you." "Thank you, Margaret, for everything." "Don't thank me. Just take care of them. That's all the thanks I need." As the night wore on and the guests began to drift away, Jake found himself standing alone at the edge of the celebration. Clara was putting Lily to bed, and the others were gathering their things to head home. "Mr. Brennan?" He turned to find Deputy Harrison approaching, hat in hand. "Deputy, I wanted to say goodbye before I head back to Cheyenne. The marshal wants me to testify at Whitmore's trial." "I appreciate you coming. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Harrison's young face was serious. "What Wheeler and I did, following Marcus's orders without questioning them, that was wrong. I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway. Coming here, standing with you, it's the least I could do." "You made it right in the end. That counts for something." "Does it?" Harrison shook his head. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't fought back. If Clara hadn't made it to Cheyenne. Marcus would have won. He would have taken everything, and I would have helped him do it." "But that's not what happened." "No, because of you. Because you were willing to stand up when nobody else would." Harrison straightened his shoulders. "I'm going to do better, Mr. Brennan. I'm going to be the kind of lawman this territory needs. The kind who protects people instead of preying on them." Jake studied the young man's face. He saw determination there. Purpose. The makings of something good. "I believe you will." Harrison rode off into the darkness, and Jake turned back toward the cabin. Through the window he could see Clara moving around the kitchen, cleaning up the last of the celebration. Her silhouette was warm and familiar, like something he'd been waiting for his whole life. He climbed the porch steps and went inside. "She's finally asleep," Clara said, nodding toward the back room where Lily's soft breathing could be heard. "Took 3 stories and a promise to let her name the new calf." "That's a lot of bargaining." "She's a tough negotiator." Clara set down the dish she'd been drying and turned to face him. "Hello, husband." "Hello, wife." The words still felt new, still felt miraculous. "Are you happy?" Clara asked.
More than I've been in a long time. You?
Yes.
She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him.
Yes, I'm happy. I'm scared too, but mostly happy.
What are you scared of?
The future, the unknown, all the things that could still go wrong.
She pulled back to look at him.
I've learned not to trust good things. They have a way of disappearing.
I'm not going anywhere.
You can't promise that. Nobody can.
No, but I can promise to be here as long as I'm able. To fight for this family with everything I have. To choose you and Lily every single day for the rest of my life. Jake cupped her face in his hands. That's the only promise that matters, Clara. The choice to keep choosing.
Then I promise the same. To choose you.
To stand with you. To build something worth having, no matter how hard it gets. That's all I need. They held each other in the quiet cabin, the fire burning low, their daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room. Outside, the night stretched vast and full of stars, full of possibility, full of the kind of hope Jake had forgotten how to feel. The next few months passed in a blur of hard work and quiet happiness. Jake rebuilt the barn, with help from Jim Cooper and the other ranchers who'd stood with them. Clara expanded the garden, planted apple trees, started planning a proper hen house. Lily started lessons with a teacher Margaret had found in Cheyenne, learning to read and write and do sums. The ranch prospered. The herd grew. The cabin that had once felt empty now overflowed with life and laughter.
Papa, look!
Jake looked up from mending the fence to see Lily racing toward him on her pony. She'd gotten good over the past few weeks, really good.
She sat the saddle like she'd been born to it.
Watch this. She put the pony through its paces. Walk, trot, canter, stop. Her form was nearly perfect, her commands clear and confident. Not bad, Jake said when she pulled up beside him.
Not bad. That was amazing.
Okay, it was pretty good.
Pretty good?
Lily's face fell, then brightened when she saw him smiling.
You're teasing me.
Maybe a little.
Mama says teasing is how you show love.
Your mama's a smart woman.
I know.
Lily leaned down to pat her pony's neck.
Papa, can I ask you something?
Always.
Do you ever miss being alone?
The question caught Jake off guard. Why do you ask?
Because sometimes you get this look, like you're far away. And I wondered if maybe you wish things were like before me and Mama came.
Jake set down his tools and walked over to stand beside her pony. You want to know the truth? Lily nodded. The truth is, I do think about before sometimes, about the quiet, about not having anyone to worry about but myself. He reached up and took her hand. But I never wish things were like that again. That life was safe. But it wasn't really living. You and your mama taught me the difference.
What is the difference?
Living means having people who matter, people you'd fight for, people who make the hard days worth getting through and the good days worth celebrating. Jake squeezed her hand. I'd take 100 hard days with you and your mama over 1,000 easy ones alone. Lily's eyes glistened.
I love you, Papa.
I love you too, little bit. She leaned down from her saddle and hugged him, her small arms tight around his neck. Jake held her and felt his heart crack open with a love so fierce it almost hurt. This was what he'd been missing. This was what he'd been running from. This was everything. That evening, Clara met him on the porch with news. I went to see Doc Morrison today. Jake's heart stuttered. Are you sick?
No.
Clara's face broke into a smile. I'm pregnant. For a moment, Jake couldn't speak, couldn't think, could only stand there staring at his wife while her words slowly sank in.
Pregnant, he repeated. About 3 months along, the doc thinks. I wasn't sure, but I wanted to wait until I knew for certain before I told you. Her smile faltered. Jake, are you all right? He pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she laughed. I'm more than all right. He couldn't find the words. There weren't words big enough. Clara, I never thought. I'd given up hoping for... I know. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes wet with happy tears. I know. So would I. Have you told Lily? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. They told her together that night after supper. Lily's reaction was everything Jake could have hoped for and more. A baby? A real baby? She jumped up from her chair and threw her arms around Clara. Is it a boy or a girl? When is it coming? Can I name it? We don't know yet. Sometime in the spring, and we'll talk about names later, Clara laughed. I hope it's a girl. I want a sister. Lily's eyes went wide. But a brother would be okay too. I could teach him to ride. And Scout could protect him and... Slow down, sweetheart. The baby won't be here for months. But I have so much to plan. Jake watched his daughter bounce around the cabin, already making lists of everything she needed to teach her future sibling. His daughter. The thought still caught him off guard sometimes. Clara came to stand beside him, her hand finding his. Happy? More than I can say. Scared? Terrified. Me too. She leaned her head against his shoulder. But the good kind of scared. The kind that means something important is happening. Yeah, Jake said. That's exactly it. Word of Clara's pregnancy spread through the territory faster than wildfire. Neighbors who'd once whispered behind their hands now showed up with gifts and congratulations. Mrs. Hendricks, the sour-faced storekeeper who'd given them so much trouble, appeared one day with a handmade quilt and an apology so stiff it was almost painful to witness. I was wrong about you, she said, not quite meeting Clara's eyes. About both of you. I hope you can forgive an old woman's foolishness. Clara accepted the quilt graciously. There's nothing to forgive. You weren't the only one with doubts. No, but I was the loudest. Mrs. Hendricks finally looked up. Your husband did a brave thing, standing up to Marcus Whitmore. This territory needs more men like him. I know. That's why I married him. After she left, Jake shook his head in amazement. I never thought I'd see the day. People change, given enough time and enough reasons. Most people find their way to doing right. Clara set the quilt aside. Besides, she's not wrong. This territory does need more men like you. There are plenty of good men around. Not plenty, not enough. Clara turned to face him. But that's changing, because of what happened here. Because you showed people that standing up for what's right isn't impossible. It's just hard. I didn't do it alone. No, you did it with your family. And that's the point, isn't it? Nobody has to fight alone. Not if they have people willing to stand with them. Spring came early that year. The snow melted from the mountains and rushed down into the valleys, turning the creeks into torrents and the meadows into carpets of wildflowers. The cattle grew fat on new grass. The apple trees Clara had planted burst into blossom. And on a cool morning in late April, Clara went into labor. Jake sent Lily to the Cooper's place and then spent the next 12 hours pacing the porch while Doc Morrison and Margaret worked inside. The screams were the worst part. Every time Clara cried out, Jake felt it in his own body, felt helpless and terrified and desperate to do something. She's strong, Margaret told him during a brief break. The baby's positioned right. It's just taking time. How much time? As much as it takes. Babies come when they're ready, not when we want them to. The sun was setting when Jake finally heard it. A thin, wavering cry, getting stronger by the second. The sound of new life announcing itself to the world. He burst through the door without thinking.
Clara lay in their bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in the quilt Mrs. Hendricks had made.
"Come meet your son,"
she said. Jake crossed the room on legs that didn't feel like his own. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blankets. His son had dark hair like Clara's and the small, determined chin. His eyes were closed, his fists clenched, his rosebud mouth working silently.
"He's perfect," Jake breathed. "He looks like you."
"Poor kid," Clara laughed weakly. "I'm serious. He has your nose, your jawline." Jake couldn't see it. All he could see was a miracle. A tiny, perfect miracle he'd helped create. "What should we name him?" Clara hesitated. "I was thinking Daniel, if that's all right with you." Jake looked at her, saw the hope and uncertainty in her eyes. "Daniel Brennan," he said slowly. "I like it." "You're sure? I know it's strange, naming our son after my first husband. But Daniel was a good man, and he deserves to be remembered." "He does. And this way, Lily will have a piece of her father with her always." Jake leaned down and kissed Clara's forehead. "Daniel it is." They brought Lily home to meet her brother the next day. Her reaction was everything Jake had hoped for. "He's so small," she whispered, peering into the cradle. "And wrinkly. Is he supposed to be that wrinkly?" "All babies are wrinkly at first," Clara explained. "He'll smooth out. Can I hold him?" "Sit down first, and be very careful." Jake watched Lily settle into the rocking chair and take the baby with exaggerated caution. Her face transformed as she looked down at her brother, protective, tender, fierce. "Hello, Daniel," she said softly. "I'm your big sister Lily. I'm going to teach you everything. How to ride, how to read, how to train Scout to do tricks." She looked up at Jake and Clara. "And I'm going to protect him, always, no matter what." "I know you will," Jake said. The years that followed were the happiest of Jake's life. He watched Lily grow from a fierce little girl into a fierce young woman. He watched Daniel take his first steps, say his first words, fall in love with horses just like his sister. He watched Clara grow stronger and more beautiful with each passing season. They added to the cabin. They expanded the herd. They became pillars of the community, the couple people came to for advice and help. Jim Cooper's partnership grew into a genuine friendship. Margaret O'Brien became like a grandmother to the children. There were hard times, too. Harsh winters, lost cattle, a drought that nearly broke them. But they faced every challenge the way they'd faced Marcus Whitmore. Together, refusing to give up, refusing to let fear win. On the 10th anniversary of their wedding, Jake and Clara stood on the porch of the house they'd built together, watching their children play in the yard. "Do you ever wonder," Clara asked, "what would have happened if Lily hadn't knocked on your door that morning?" "Sometimes." "Where do you think you'd be?" Jake considered the question. "Dead, probably. Not in body, maybe, but in every way that matters. I was barely alive when you found me, Clara. Just going through the motions, waiting for the end." "And now?" "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." He pulled her close. "You saved my life that day. You and Lily. I've never told you that enough."
"You saved ours, too. It goes both ways."
"I know. That's what makes it work." They watched Lily chase Daniel across the yard, both children laughing. Scout bounded after them, old now, but still full of joy. "Happy?" Clara asked. "More than I ever thought possible. You?" "Yes." She turned to look at him, her dark eyes full of the love they'd built over 10 years of choosing each other. "Yes,
I'm happy. I'm home."
Jake kissed her, long and slow, and felt the truth of her words settle into his bones. Home. Not just a place, but a feeling. A choice made and remade every day. A family built from broken pieces and fierce hope. He'd spent 4 years running from life. Then a little girl had knocked on his door with blood on her nightgown and terror in her eyes, and everything had changed. Some choices defined a man. Some moments shaped everything that followed. Jake had made his choice that morning. He'd opened his door. He'd stepped into the unknown.
He'd let himself care again, even though caring meant risking pain. And in return, he'd received everything he'd ever wanted. Love, family, purpose, a life worth living. Clara squeezed his hand. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about choices, about the ones we make and the ones that make us."
And?
And I'd make the same choice again, every time, without hesitation.
So would I.
They stood together as the sun set over the mountains, over the ranch they'd built, over the family they'd created from nothing but courage and hope. The knock that had broken Jake Brennan's silence had led him here, to this moment, to this life. And standing on the porch of his home, with his wife beside him and his children's laughter filling the air, Jake knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was exactly where he was meant to be. Some doors were meant to be opened. Some silences were meant to be broken. And some broken hearts were meant to heal, stronger than before, braver than before, ready at last to love again.